Good morning, wherever you are on the planet that we have to call home, magnificent planet Earth. You are on a live game drive here in the wilds of the south, at least northeastern South Africa. There's a complicated thing for this time of the morning. We are east of the Drakensberg and west of the Rhyolite Lobombo Mountains here in the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, sitting on about 1,500 hectares of a greater 8 million acre piece of wildlife land. Now I'm confusing metrics here, but that's because I know that our audience comes from various parts of the world which use different kinds of measurements. Of course, why we all aren't on the metric system yet is a fact more baffling than the origin of man. Now, you are on a live game drive safari. We do want to hear from you. Please remember that. Hashtag Safari Live if you'd like to tweet to us like the virtual starlings I can hear calling off to my right-hand side. Or if you're on the email, questions at wildearth.tv. My name is James Hendry. I look a little bit like Tom Sawyer today, sitting blissfully in this apple leaf tree with some torn shorts upon my person. On camera today we've got Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hello, James.
And in the final control room we have Tara and Louise. Wendy, you'll be pleased to know, for our regular viewers, Wendy is a vehicle, not in fact a person, more recalcitrant than any person I've ever met, is back and being harnessed for action. So with any luck we'll see her a bit later on during the drive. Otherwise it's me for 3 hours, I'm afraid. There was something else I had to tell you of vital importance. Oh yes, it's 17 degrees Celsius, apparently 63 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it's pretty warm. There's a lovely wind or breeze blowing from behind me. I suspect it's going to pick up into a bit of a wind. And off to your left-hand side, the sun has just peeped up over the horizon. I'm going to attempt to climb down while you look at the sun. Magnificent sunrise, and just before the sun came up there was a spectacular little sliver of moon. Magnificent little sliver of moon shining a sort of golden orange on that horizon, and that was wonderful, but it's now disappeared, of course, in the glare of the magnificent African sun. Right, now the first thing I would like you all to do, please, the last time I took a drive, which was 2 days ago in the morning, we did a screenshot of quarantine clearings, and the idea behind that was to just check how green things are becoming. So we're going to swing the camera around, have a look at quarantine clearings here. We're not in exactly the same place as we were last time, but we're about 100 meters down the road, but the impression is the same. The grasses are the same. So just take a screenshot of that. Let me get out of frame. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, snap. And again, 1, 2, 3, snap. So you can definitely already see that quarantine is becoming greener, as is everything else around. That apple leaf I was sitting in has failed so far to sprout new leaves, but I think they always are a little bit late. Very nicely, in fact, we've got a knobthorn in camp that has just sprouted brand new leaves, which is lovely to see. Right. The plan this morning is going to be to go towards Buffelshoek Dam, see if anything's crossed the northern boundary. If it hasn't, well, then that's just bad luck for us. We'll have a look what's at the dam. Brent Leo Smith swears blind he saw a purple banded sunbird there yesterday. No one here believes him, of course. I actually suspect he might be right. But we're going to go and see if we can't find that again. And if we can't, we're going to head across to Arethusa, where Shadow and Madiba, it's the first time I've ever got that right, were found yesterday, and we'll see if we can find them again. I'm not going to rush across to Arethusa straight away, because there will be about 755 game drives going through that area during the course of the morning, and we want to avoid the traffic because the wilderness is what it's all about. Okay, here we go. I'm going to turn around for our trip to the north. The gentle purr of Jiga. Sorry, Brian. Let me go around this way. I must say it is a beautiful, beautiful morning. I was inspired to climb that tree by Brian, who said, why don't you sit in the nook of that tree? And I thought, that looks like the spot for a young man to sit, so I thought, well, I shall ignore my 38 years, get up there and swing my legs as though resting on a riverbank like Tom Sawyer. Every day the little dawn chorus starts to become a bit louder, and in the middle of winter we had a much more chamber music effect, and now we're building up, of course, towards the magnificence of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and I think that will happen probably around October, when most of the birds are back. And I'm sorry for those of you who regret not being able to see me come down the tree because Brian went to the sunset. Let me assure you, the elegance with which I came down that tree was not something that I would like anyone to see, I don't feel. We did have a squirrel alarm calling around here earlier, but this is right near where we live. And that squirrel, as Viam likes to say, has been crying wolf for the last 3 weeks. So either there's a leopard living underneath its tree, which I think is highly unlikely, or it's just a very cross animal. Now this kind of sort of windy, it was very hot yesterday. I think it probably hit about 34 degrees. And the kind of windiness around and heat is more typical of the September time weather than the rain that we had the other day. So normally what would happen is we wouldn't have had those 20 millimeters or 25 millimeters of rain, and it would just start to get windy and very hot. So it's rather relieving that the ground it's still quite moist after that wonderful rain that we had. So it's rather relieving as the heat starts to build, and those funny September what we call berg winds, which are hot winds that come in often from the north. It's quite nice to have some moisture in the ground when they're here. Next time I climb a tree, I'll make it sure it's a bit more easy to descend from, and then I shall show you my climbing skills. They're not quite like that of a leopard. Right, also to give you a little bit of an update on the lions. Now, as many of you will know, the lions are in a state of high turmoil. Quick recap from the beginning. So the status quo about 2 months ago, excuse me, status quo 2 months ago consisted of the following. Remember, before I get into this, you must understand that the pride, unlike in The Lion King, which has created all sorts of biological misconceptions around the world, the pride does not consist of females, babies, and the male. It's only the females and the youngsters in the pride. The males form a coalition or on their own, and their territories stick on top of the pride. So a coalition of males could have more than one pride territory. So the status quo as of a little while ago was basically 2 prides that we used to see in this area, the Nkahumas and the Styx pride, and they were they fell under the, I don't like to say domination, but they fell under the territory of a coalition known as the Matimba males. Two very different looking but equally magnificent males, and that was the status quo. Then, come February, a rumour started to come in from the north of 5 marauding young males who were pushing to the south. Now, no one paid a huge amount of attention to it at that stage until they killed one of the Nkuhuma lionesses. So at that stage, the Nkuhumas were 6 adult lionesses, 2 sub-adults, and a young male called Junior. After that, the Birmingham boys, these 5 marauding males, disappeared further back into the north from whence they came, and little was heard of them but for rumour travelling down the bush telegraph. And then eventually they came back again at the end of June, and they killed another Nkuhuma lioness, and that was on Torchwood over a scuffle at a buffalo kill. And from that day on, they've moved into this area. They've chased those 2 Matimba males south. They are now in Mala Mala. Well, they were until 2 days ago. They've killed another 2 sub-adult Nkuhuma lionesses, which means that the Nkuhumas are now sitting at 4 lionesses and the male who is running for his life. The Birminghams yesterday pushed down as far south as Mala Mala. Now that means that they are now at the southern extremity of the Matimba territory. So those Matimbas do not seem to stand much of a chance. We thought maybe they'd escape down into Mala Mala with the Styx Pride and hang around there, and the Birminghams would be left to dominate this area. Because the Matimba's territory did extend in north into the Manileti, but we didn't see them there much, of course, because we don't traverse there. So that's the story with the lions this side. The Styx, meanwhile, have had a scuffle with the Matimbas. They nearly killed one of the young lionesses that they had there. She seems to be on the mend, though. We had a report that she was seen and seems to be on the mend. So I thought she'd been killed by the Matimbas, but that is not the case at the moment. A couple of other prides around the place, but it becomes so complicated that I think even the Grand Chess Master Gary Kasparov would struggle to understand the complexities of what's going on with the lions around here. So for the moment, let's just understand the Matimbas have been chased out, the Birmingham boys are flavour of the month, and the Nkuhumas are on the run north into the Manileti, and the Styx Pride are likewise doing the same to the south. This, of course, means that it is unlikely we will see any lions on Juma. That said, 4 lions were seen. I don't know who they were. They could have been the Nkuhumas coming south into Arathusa yesterday evening. So we will get reports from there and head across there a little bit later and see what we can find. Phew, complicated. And apparently, I'm just getting a report now that it was, I think, the Nkuhuma lionesses in Arathusa last night. It was the Styx. It was the Styx Pride on Arathusa last night. So they're running all over the place. I think it's going to be another scorcher today. Might even hit up to sort of 34, 36 degrees. And please just understand, I know that some of you will ask questions that won't get answered. That is not because we're ignoring you. We are struggling a little bit at the moment with our radios, and so some of the questions are just not going to come through like they're supposed to. But please keep asking, and we will endeavour to get to everything that you might like to say to us. I'm just going to stop and have a quick look at the sun, once I can get into a gap. There we go. Beautiful. Now the horizon, sorry Brian, I've parked on a slope. The horizon is that colour. It's that kind of smoky brown turned orange because of the smoke that's in the area. And the smoke, I will explain to you now. I'm just going to get a quick update on the radio from anybody else who might be mobile. By mobile I mean on game drive. And let's see what else. Good morning, mobile stations. No one's talking to me currently. So quite a quietish morning actually, and I think that's probably because of this wind. Morning, mobile stations. Any updates so far? We'll keep trying. Okay, so while we're driving along this northern cut line, hoping to pick up one or two tracks perhaps, or just some animals that very kindly and confidingly might be lying upon the road. Important to understand why there's so much smoke in the air. So before I get onto the smoke, an interesting thing that happened, and thanks to Brian I actually understand what's going on with this, because I didn't know initially. Siberia Zumi and Sandy in Indiana, you would like to know, you've read about one of the Investec pack of wild dogs that was killed yesterday, or found dead, and apparently killed by a snake bite. Now what's interesting is that Brian, as I was walking past his room on my way to bathe myself this morning so that I might have the fresh visage that you see in front of you at the moment, said, "Oi, come in here." And he showed me a picture of this wild dog that apparently had been killed by a hemotoxic snake. Now a hemotoxic snake is something that poisons the blood, and eventually basically you hemorrhage internally from all over. It's a very unpleasant way to go. But what's very interesting about it is that to be bitten, there are only two hemotoxic snakes out here. One is called a vine snake and the other is called a tree snake or boomslang. Both of those snakes are very shy and retiring. They're back-fanged, which means that their fangs are not in the front of the mouth, they're in the back. And so it's quite difficult for them to bite things that are large, like a wild dog. Not so difficult for them to bite things like chameleons, which they like to eat. So I'm not really sure how it would have happened. I've only ever heard of one person being bitten by a boomslang, and it basically stood on the snake, and he didn't even notice the bite until he felt that the fangs going into his legs. Anyway, you've got time with a hemotoxic snake. He went off to hospital, but he then did have to have 3 blood transfusions, so it's extremely venomous, the boomslang and the vine snake. But for a dog to have been bitten, I don't know how it would have happened. I suspect it was almost a freak accident, where the dog was maybe it was a young dog that was playing, found the snake and was playing with it and didn't understand it, and somehow managed to get bitten. But I have seen somebody try and pick one of those snakes up, misidentifying it, and it just tried to get away. So they're certainly not aggressive snakes at all, but very sad to have lost a wild dog to a boomslang or vine snake, hemotoxic venom. Thank you, Sandy and Siberia, for that, and thank you, Brian. Now the smoke you can see in the air comes from the fact that a lot of people do controlled burning at this time of year. The tradition is that after the first 20 millimeters of rain, you then burn the old grass off, and that should help the new grass come through. And that does seem to be the case. So We're not going to burn a Juma this year because there isn't a lot of grass, and that's because there wasn't a lot of rain last year during the rainy season. And I think that the places that were burning are generally on areas that have a different underlying geology from Juma. They've got more gabbro-based soils, which tend to produce more open, long grass clearings. So this is a very good time for them to burn. And that smoke is still hanging in the air. Yesterday there were a lot of burns around the place. Trees very seldom create much of an issue here. Brownie, a little chilly this morning. On your feet. Brian's just wrapping a blankie around his feet. He's wearing summer shoes today. Bad idea. There is a kudu, our first mammal of the morning. Probably going to disappear. Brian, can you see it? There's a female kudu. I doubt she's alone. Beautiful antelope, tended by the magnificent fork-tailed drongo. And we're just going to have a bit of a listen here and see what we can hear. Nothing very loud at the moment. Lots of francolins calling in the distance. Little fork-tailed drongo going. Some green emerald spotted wood doves. Ring-necked doves, grey-headed sparrows. And of course the lovely little chin spot batis. I'm going to show you a picture of the chin spot batis to show why he's called a batis. Not a batis, a chin spot. I don't know why it's called a batis. Couldn't begin to tell you. Right. There's the chin spotted batis. And unusually for a bird species, this one is named for the female. That's that one there. Because she's got a little spot on her, Brian?
On her chin.
Correct, a spot on her chin. Chin spot batis. Lots of little batises that you get. This is the only one we find here. You may, on the odd occasion, find a Cape batis, but, well, be probably about as believable as the purple-banded sunbird, which we're going to go and find. Check up on Brent Leo Smith's ornithology. Having seen the photograph, I think he's actually right. So just to recap, from yesterday, Brent went out and he was at Buffelshoek Dam and he saw a purple-banded sunbird. Well, that's what he says is a purple-banded sunbird. Now, very easily confused with a Morocco sunbird, which is very common here. Purple-banded, according to my bird app, doesn't occur here, but according to Brent's book, it does occur here. So, we're not really sure. Sunbirds, for those of you who don't know, are basically Africa's equivalent to hummingbirds, which are found in the New World. Right, you are going to lose signal briefly as we go through this dip. So I apologize in advance for that. Oh, sorry, before we do that, I must just show you this termite mound. Not for the termites. For the magnificent green that is starting to come out of it. You see the grass tufts starting to sprout their new green leaves. See how they do it. Beautiful. And that's a species called Chloris roxburghiana, unless I'm very much mistaken. And while I am often very much mistaken, this time I don't think I am. Lovely name, Chloris roxburghiana. So a nice question, and I think a relevant one, from X-Ranga in Tasmania. You want to know, if we don't get follow-up rain to this one that we had, the early rains, is it possible that this was a false spring? Well, I don't know what a false spring would be out here, but for the fact that, I mean, it's got hot and everything's flushed, so I think we're into proper spring. I do think, however, that it's quite possible that those rains we had are going to be the last we see for a little while. And by little while, I mean 2 months. I may be entirely wrong. I'm certainly not going to make a prediction again. I've ended up with more than a dozen eggs on my face with the predictions about the first rains. But I think you are right. It's unusually early, and so possibly not again for the next little while. You're going to lose us now. Right, we should be back, heading up due east towards the Biffleshoek Dam. No tracks coming in or out at this point. Very, very beautiful early spring morning. Yet on the radio. I'm just going to try and make contact again. Warning stations, any route or sightings update this morning? Nothing but a deathly silence. We can see little signs of spring, and interesting observation from Melissa in Arizona, and it's a good one. Melissa, you say, why are there no rocks here? You see all around, you look, and there don't seem to be many rocks. Well, there are some rocks, but you're right, they're not a huge number. I'll try and find you a rock if you like. That's certainly much easier than finding a leopard. But we're sitting on a very ancient piece of geology here, and that means that most of the rock is weathered. Now, further to the south, there are a number of what we call koppies or rocky outcrops, where there's been a sort of bubbling up of granite way back, of igneous granite, way back in prehistory, and that's left a whole lot of rocky outcrops to the south. And then there are areas, not on this particular little piece of land, but to the east of us, a place called Torchwood. They've got a couple of rocky outcrops there too. But yes, you are correct. It's not a very... It's because the granite that we're on has weathered into these deep sands that proliferate on the crest areas. Some of the gabbro areas a bit more rocky, but not nearly as rock-free as a place like the Okavango Delta and the Kalahari, which can't find a Vango. And that's simply because it's weathered over the millions and millions of years that it has been around without any volcanic activity. Good observation, Melissa. I'm astonished that you managed to pick that up from sitting at your computer screen. Well done. It was a very steamy evening last night, and by that I don't mean anything other than it was hot. lest I get myself into trouble. And I was very pleased I was very pleased when the wind came up and cooled my room down. Brian, stop laughing. Rocks. Good heavens, Melissa, we found you some rocks. Well done, Brian. Great spot. Look at that. Astonishing sighting. Let me alight from the vehicle quickly so that we can have a look at them. Very angry, rattling testicular over there. Melissa, here is a rock. This rock is possibly some form of granite that has not weathered. It's also probably got quite a lot of dolerite in it, and the dolerite seems not to weather as fast as the granite does. And so these dark rocks, there's some sort of intrusions around the place, and they probably will form a sill. There'll be a line of them that has popped up towards the surface here, and this dark colored rock is called dolerite, I think. I'm not a great geologist, but I'm pretty sure that that's what it is. It's a good rock, Melissa. Excellent rock. Not quite as good as a leopard, but it is an excellent rock. And of course, easy to find because they don't tend to move around quite as much as leopards do. Well spotted, Brian. Now could you find a leopard? Plug myself back in. Oh dear. I thought for 1 second that the car wasn't going to start. It would have been a disaster. Right, we're now at the very northeastern corner of Djuma. So we're at the northeastern extremity of where we're allowed to drive. Tracks of hippopotamus. So just to recap, and in case there's been some form of confusion, Jody and Jennifer, the Birmingham boys, as I said this morning, are way south in Mala Mala. They're nowhere near, well they were yesterday, they're nowhere near here. And Shadow and Cub were quite close to 4 of the Styx Pride yesterday. I'm pretty sure they're okay. I haven't had an update this morning. We will head across there a little bit later, but I'm sure they're fine. And they certainly weren't anywhere near the Birmingham boys. A couple of the Styx Pride who were on Arathusa yesterday were going towards where, well, in the general direction of Shadow and Madiba. They certainly weren't looking for them, as far as I understand. That would be counterintuitive. So I think they would just happen to be moving in a similar direction. Those leopards are so sharp, though. You know, they would have smelt the proverbial rat, or in this case lion, long before I think the lions would have become aware of them. Well, that's normally the case anyway. And that's not to say that lions aren't a threat to leopards, but I think far more often than not the leopards get away. The far eastern boundary appears to be fairly mammal-free and indeed bird-free. Ah, there are some birds, Brian. Oh, merciful heavens. Oh, look at that, Brian, a ring-necked dove. Astonishing sighting. Just off to our right-hand side, flying away at roughly Mach 3. So that was a ring-necked dove. There's one on the road too. Ooh. Let's just stop here a little while. There is a beautiful ring-necked dove on the road, but there's also a white-crowned shrike up in the tree to the left of it. 2 of them now. 3, 4 of them. But now they've flown off. So that's the ring-necked dove. We hear it often going broop, 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 broop. And there's the white-crowned shrike that you can see. You could just see his little white crown there in your picture. And they're starting to shout it. All the birds are starting to shout more and more as they come towards the mating time. They'll start nesting. And soon their little nests will be filled with chicks. Just hold on, I'm just going to use the radio quickly. Go ahead. Craig, Jamie's not on drive, so I'm not sure how that's possible. It's only me on drive and I'm on cheetah cut line. Copy that. If you wouldn't mind just relaying that to them so that we don't create an incident. I'm just going to, while I've got somebody on the radio, I'm just going to get an update. Craig, are there any updates? I think he's moved channels already. Okay, here we go. We have a few more birds here, which in the absence of marauding lions, I think we'll have a look at. Well, that's not the only reason we'll have a look at them. They're beautiful little starlings. Now hiding, of course, with great skill. Those are either Cape glossy starlings or lesser blue-eared glossy starlings, so-called because they are glossy. But we'll only know if they call. They're almost indistinguishable unless they call. There are 2 more of them that just have landed. And they're, I mean, you all know possibly from watching that the starlings that we get here are that beautiful blue colour. Better, I mean, more easily coloured. More easy to see their colours when the sun's shining from the other direction. But they're all that kind of glossy green, purple, and blue colour, but these particular ones have got bright yellow eyes. So that's how we know they're either Cape glossy for greater blue-eared glossy starlings. Right, let us press upon. We're also possibly on the highest point at the moment at Juma, and so it's always quite a nice spot to just take note of the altitude and inhale the gorgeous breeze that blows up to the top of the crests. Lovely smell, fresh smell in the air before the heat of the day begins. There is a little steenbok. Please don't run away, steenbok. Please allow us to watch you for a little while. Then we will move on. Very clever little steenbok. Loving, just really loving and relishing the new grass shoots that are popping out. Remember, a steenbok is something called a concentrate feeder, and that means that it has to eat very rich vegetation, otherwise it cannot maintain the energy that it needs to survive. So it eats fresh grass, a couple of, probably the odd rhizome, which is an underground stem of a grass. It's actually a really nice little steenbok sighting. And the male, of course, has got the horns, female, no horns. She'll be around here. They live in pairs. You will read sometimes that they're solitary, but that is not the case. They are definitely in pairs, monogamous, it would seem, and the reason she's not around with him all the time is that it makes them slightly more obvious than they want to be. Their key ability to, or their key strategy for avoiding predation is to hide. And obviously if there are two of them, it's doubly hard to hide. But they will remain in visual and olfactory or smell communication in their little territory. So she will be around here somewhere, and they'll know where each other are. Little steenbok. Lovely call of the white-browed scrub robin starting. Very peaceful morning this. Okay, soon we will turn to the west towards Buffelshoek Dam, see what is there. You can still, I don't know if you can see, you probably can't tell from where you are, but there's still quite a lot of moisture that there is. Oh, there's another kudu. Two kudu, Brian. A plethora of animals going on here. There's quite a lot of moisture still in the ground. And those birds you saw exploding off the kudu's back are oxpeckers, red-billed oxpeckers. And also look at them relishing that beautiful fresh leaves on the combretum trees. Try and roll a bit forward and see if we can't get a better view so that you're not staring at the tree. There we go. That, Brian. Wasn't that nice of me? Huge ears like satellite dishes, picking up the sound. Sorry, everybody, will you excuse me 1 second? Apparently I'm being hailed on the radio, but I can't make head nor tail of it. Oh, look, 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 look. There's there are a whole lot of little lilac-breasted rollers, and I'm going to show you why they're called rollers. Can you see that one, Brian? I'm just going to get a little bit closer. There we go. Right, now watch this. Watch that bird. I know it's but a speck, but watch him now. Is he too small? he's sorry, he's a tiny speck, and he's about to do a magnificent display. But unless we had the Hubble, no, sorry about that. He's flown too far away. Without the Hubble Space Telescope, I'm afraid not going to be possible. Sorry about that. Sorry, excuse me everybody, go ahead. Go ahead. Our radios really are giving us a bit of trouble. I'm not showing you my hand, everybody. I'm indicating that I can hear the radio now. Right, heading towards Buffelshoek Dam. Beastly little lilac-breasted roller flying so far away and doing his display out of sight. So a question from Crystal about all the new grass shoots, and I think if I heard the question correctly, Crystal, you're a little bit worried perhaps about the zebra and their new grass shoots, and I think you're possibly a horsewoman worried that the zebra might become ill from such rich food. Crystal, I don't think they do, you know. I think that they will, I know with horses they have to have quite a lot of roughage, or they do tend to get a little bit ill in the stomach, get a bit colicky. I think here what you'll find is that they will eat some of the green stuff because they do need the nutrition, there's no question, but they will also eat the roughage all around the green. So I don't think there's any issue there. It's not nearly as concentrated as grain. Now a horse, of course, is not evolved to eat grain, and yet that's what we feed them. Same with our cattle. Cattle and horses and chickens, which we tend to feed maize in great volumes. None of them have got digestive systems that have evolved to deal with them, and so you've got to be very careful when you're feeding an animal food that it's not designed to eat. Whereas out here, Crystal, the zebras are perfectly adapted to eating whatever they can find in the bush. Oh, so we're now at Biffles Hook Waterhole, and just before we look at the water, Brian, look at this. Look how the balanites or torchwood tree has sprouted green. And while we're looking at the red-billed buffalo weaver's nest there, question from Gail in Salem, Ohio, which sounds like an interesting place. I didn't know there was a Salem in Ohio. There seem to be many, many Salems around the world. Gail, you want to know when the village weavers are going to be back. The village weaver, for those of you who don't know, is a little little yellow bird that builds a special nest for its prospective wife. And they will be back, Gail, very shortly. I'm sure they're busily dressing themselves, getting their new plumage on, and soon they will be around and weaving their magnificent little nests. And for those of you who don't know, the village weaver is that bird there. Lovely yellow bird. Right, now because we are at Biffles Hook Waterhole, I'm going to go and see if we can see the tree where Brent Smith claims to have seen the purple-banded sunbird. I think if it's nesting, it'll be around there. If it's not nesting, then it will have moved on. Which tree was it? Far end.
Right behind on the left.
Okay, I see the one you mean. Let's go and have a look-see. There is nothing in the way of mammal life here that I can see. At Biffles Hook, there are a couple of Egyptian gooses. And there they are, swimming peacefully across Biffles Hook Dam. Brian, can you hear that bird going? Let's just see if we can pick it up. I think, everybody, that is a yellow-fronted tinker barbet, but it's either had a lot to drink or it's a bit confused because it's calling much more slowly than it would normally. The yellow-fronted tinker barbet should be going doo, 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 doo. And it's right in front of where Brian is filming. It's way down in the drainage line, but I can just hear it calling, going doom, 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 doom. No, it stopped calling now. I'll just quickly show you a picture of it. The yellow-fronted tinkerbird. There he is there. Very pretty little bird. And they make that lovely tinking sound. And it's really, it's a quintessential bush sound of the summer. Ding. Very nice. The yellow-fronted tinker bird. Right, let's see if we can find the sunbird. I can hear some sunbirds calling, so we might be lucky. I'm going to get hold of Aubrey. Aubrey has seen some lions too far from here, I'm afraid, where we can't go. I'm just going to find out which lions they are. Aubrey, which animals are those? This one, Brian, will be on the other side. Okay, thanks. So the pride, everybody has come back south. It's a stroke of luck. Right, this is the tree, everyone, and there is a bird. It's there, you know that. Well, there's at least a white-bellied sunbird in that tree. I'm going to go a little bit closer. You see it flitting around there. I'll be amazed. So they're eating, drinking the nectar from the flowers on this Combretum herreriense, or russet bush willow tree. Oh, this can be a very frustrating activity, but there were definitely some sunbirds here. There, that one that you can hear going chip, 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 is a sunbird. I will try. Oh, no. You did see it, hey? There we go. There. That's a white-bellied. Sorry, Craig, thanks for that. Just go again with the second update. It's a white-bellied sunbird, that one. Go a little bit. Copy, thanks. Gonna go a little bit further along here, and I'm going to give you a lion update, which is quite interesting. Unfortunately, nothing we can see. You got one in there, Brian? So definitely a white-bellied sunbird, but Brent definitely wouldn't have confused that one. He saw that one. There we go. That's a white-bellied flying away. There it is. No, that is a southern black tit. No, it's not, it's a puffback. Puffback shrike. I'm afraid you can't see that. Okay, we're not going to hang around here because you'll go mad trying to look through your computer screen. Okay, never mind. Right, now, quickly, before I reverse out of here, and lest I should clean off this rather precarious damn wall and leave you before you can get the update. The 4 Birmingham males are now to the east of us on Torchwood. There is one further south of that on Chitwa, which is to the south. And we think that the Styx pride are now on Hoffman's. So unfortunately we are surrounded by lions, but none of them anywhere where we're allowed to go at the moment. This is not necessarily a bad thing though, because it does mean that the center of all of this action is Djuma. It's a fairly empty center of action at the moment, but it does mean that we might be able to see some action here fairly soon. So, to summarize, 4 Nkahumas to the north of us, 4 Styx pride to the south of us, 1 big Birmingham male to the south there, and 4 to the east. Now, it's not unusual. There's a saddle-billed stork, Brian. It's not unusual for lion coalitions to mix like that, and the reason, at least to split like that, and the reason is that one of them is definitely older than the other 4, and I think that that's why he spends quite a lot of time on his own. Anyway, that's the lion update. We'll see what else we can find. It won't be lions this morning, though, right? Beautiful saddle-billed stork there. I'm just going to disrobe slightly. It's getting quite warm. And I'm sorry that we went black screen earlier, but I think I was just banging on about the lions, which I've just told you about now. So there was no, you didn't miss anything crucial there. Okay. Beautiful. Oh, look, he's caught a little fish. I often wonder when I watch a stork feeding like that, is it doing it in a completely random fashion, or is it actually seeing fish, feeding them? There we go. Probably a little tilapia. I'm also, just while you're watching that stork, I just need to quickly say something on the radio. Craig, do you copy Craig? Craig, do you copy Craig? Right, never mind. Okay. Let's see what we can find. Copy, thanks. Beautiful, beautiful morning. So that tree that we were trying to see the sunbirds in there was entirely free of any kind of flowers until about 3 days ago. And now it's just flush, full with little combretum flowers. They're not particularly impressive flowers, unless you happen to be a sunbird. You are going to lose us again briefly. Alright, now interesting question from Lisa about the weaver's nests, and do other birds use them? Perhaps those, you mean those red-billed buffalo weaver's nests. No, Lisa, other birds don't tend to use them, you know. And remember, you've asked, do they use them when the weavers migrate? Weavers don't migrate. They just lose their color. The males lose that beautiful yellow color, and when they lose that beautiful yellow color, of course, they just become unnoticeable. They become very brown, and during the winter time they're very inconspicuous. So it looks like they've migrated away, but they haven't. They've just lost their winter plumage, at least their summer plumage. Same with birds like the widers with the long tails. They also lose their tails during the summer, during the winter time. I fear I've taken my jersey off too early. Now, Jeffrey, you asked an interesting question that I'm not sure I can answer. I'm going to look in the book But you want to know if a shrike, you say, looks a little bit like a jay. I don't know if they're the same family, Jeffrey. I suspect they're... I suspect not. But they may well be a related family. And I suspect not, simply because the New World birds are often not closely related to the Old World birds, because they're separated, of course, by the Atlantic on one side and the Pacific on the other. But my book may tell me, I'm not sure. Let me see. I'll try not to wrap this Land Rover around a knobthorn tree while I'm looking. It doesn't say anything about the jays, I'm afraid, Jeffrey, so you might have to Google that one, I'm afraid. Alright, so we've come to the northeast, checked around here. Our plan is going to be now to head down to the south and then possibly west along the southern boundary and into Arathusa to see what we can spot there. I'm pretty sure unless there's some nomadic lions, it's not going to be any lions. And then Mike in New Zealand, on the furthering our discussion of ornithology, you want to know, do we get African fish eagles here? Absolutely we do, Mike. We get quite a few of them. And we'll go around towards some of the waterholes a bit later on and see if we can't spot some for you. Definitely, African fish eagles are here. Look very like the American bald eagle, for those who don't know. Same genus as far as I understand. And similar sort of strategy, but smaller than the American bald eagle though. It's actually become quite chilly again. I'm going to just put my jacket on while we're driving along. I think it's still going to be very hot today though. There we go. Bit of a breeze blowing. Yeah, on we go. Lily, you want to know how I learnt about bird calls. Was it part of my training? Well, it was a bit part of my training, but it's just experience, you know. Learning bird calls is simply a question of spending time in the bush, and I mean, you need to, if you can get hold of recordings of birds, and that's great. These days, of course, we get wonderful bird apps on our phones, which have, so it's very easy to, if you see a bird, to just play its call, which is wonderful. In the old days, of course, on a CD, you'd have a CD that had 600 bird calls on it, and trying to fossick through it just to find the right one just made the process deeply painful. But these days, it's pretty easy. The best way is to just come out here with a pair of binoculars, and when you hear a bird calling, you find it, and then you don't forget it. Once you do it that way, you don't forget. And in terms of bird calls, of course, we hear them day and night. And Lisa, you want to know why we don't hear frogs during the day? They do generally call during the night. That is absolutely correct. They don't call much during the day at all. Sometimes you'll find them calling in the day, but not much. beautiful little red-billed hornbills. I think possibly in the process of a courting display. One of them gave the other a present, which she then dropped on the floor, rejected out of hand, and that's why the male is sitting there looking a little bit ashamed. Sorry, old fella, you'll have to try again. I know how you feel. And their breeding, of course, is massively entertaining. Well, not entertaining, it's just astonishing. They go into a tree hole. He blocks up the hole. She then basically becomes entirely naked. She sheds all of her feathers, and he blocks her into the hole and feeds her while she lays the eggs, incubates them, and then by the time the chicks have hatched, she's got her feathers back, and she climbs out. They re-mud it up and feed the chicks through a tiny little hole like that until they're ready to fledge. It's a really clever sort of breeding strategy. Right, work. Many don't. Many employ the same methods as herbivores or mammal herbivores, and they have they've got bacteria, special gut bacteria that help them to digest, and that's what goes on there. And then, of course, with these ones, they don't have the bacteria so much. They use the fungus in order to derive nutrition from the lignin and cellulose. So Ruth, in Pennsylvania, that's how it works. Listening to the radio. Right. On we go. Brian, the sun has been covered by a cloud. Can you believe it? There was supposed to be a front coming in, wasn't there? Yeah, the wind is picking up. Yeah, I think the cold front is coming in fast. It's certainly coming in a lot faster than the mammals. Now, notice carefully as we look towards this lilac-breasted roller. The lilac-breasted roller is hanging on desperately to that knobthorn tree, which is just starting to sprout its new leaves. And you can see from the the firmness with which it is gripping that branch how hard the wind is blowing. And just above it, just above there, is a little ant nest. Mud ant nest. Beautiful bird that, isn't it? Very common, almost abundant resident, but inescapably magnificent. And Rick and Susie in Hawaii, I know that you've promised to send me some coffee if I can get you some feathers. I promise I am looking. I'm not obviously not a very good feather hunter, but I am looking for them constantly in anticipation of some good Hawaiian coffee, which come the late summer will be very welcome in the very early mornings. As I've said, that little ball just above the roller is an ant nest, as far as I can work it out. Now, I looked in my insect book the other day and I couldn't find any ants that make those mud nests, so I'm not sure which ant it is, but I will try and find out at some stage. Right, I think we've milked this lilac-breasted roller for all he's worth. And maybe just to explain, we did earlier, a little bit earlier, try and have a look at a lilac-breasted roller that was doing the display from which they get their name. And that display basically consists of them flying very high into the sky and making the call that gave them their Shangaan name, Veve. And they fly up into the sky going, fe, 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 fe. And then they do these incredible flips. They kind of dive up and round, and then they move from side to side, and it's an astonishing display to watch. Unfortunately, the one that we were trying to look at decided that he was going to do it a bit further away from us than our little camera was able to pick up. Well, it's not a little camera at all. It was just very far away. Right, on we go. Thank you, Siberia and Karen. You say there's a breeding herd of elephants somewhere near Juma Waterhole. I think we will probably go and have a look. I just want to show you though. I'm going to try and show you here. I don't know if you're going to pick it up though. There's some lion tracks on the road here. I think they're from the Birminghams, who have then gone into Torchwood. Yeah, I will try and find you an obvious one, but they've obviously come up here out of Mala Mala. Mala Mala is 2 farms to the south of us. They've come out up this cut line, and unfortunately they've turned right instead of left. And they're just over here inside Torchwood. Deeply irksome lions. Excuse me. So we were chatting a little bit about hornbills, red-billed hornbills, and when they go into nests and the female becomes naked and is basically defenseless inside the nest. And Brenda, you want to know what do they do for defense? Brenda, they are vulnerable, like you say, but because the hole is closed up by mud and it's got a very tiny little hole in it through which the male feeds the female, it's a pretty safe hidey hole. So she can't actually defend herself but through the use of her beak. But I think snakes would really struggle to break through that mud. Then, the other thing they do, quite interestingly, is that they often impact millipede shells or millipedes into the mud that closes up the hole. Now, millipedes, of course, are highly toxic to most animals. I know that civets and scorpions can sometimes eat them. But to many animals, they are toxic. They contain cyanide, which, as we all know, is not a very clever thing to eat. And cyanide then infuses the mud around the tree hole. And so it's a very clever way of deterring predators. Very good question, Brenda. Thank you. We're now on the southern boundary. So all around the world, when the rains come, of course the frogs start to call, and they're found in great abundance in many parts of the world. And a frog is often an excellent, or the amphibian diversity is often an excellent way to tell the condition or the health of an ecosystem. And some of those frogs are obviously toxic. And like Anna Marie in New Jersey has pointed out, there are toxic ones in Australia, and especially in South America, I believe there's some extremely toxic frogs. And you want to know if there are any toxic ones here. There's one very toxic one here called the banded rubber frog. And it's no coincidence that it happens to be a black and orange colored frog. Very toxic, and that coloring is called aposematic coloration. And whether you're a monarch butterfly or a frog or various other kinds of insect, orange and black seems to be an indication that you're poisonous and that you're to be avoided by any kind of predator. So yes, Anna Marie, that's the only really toxic one we get here, the banded rubber frog. But by toxic, it just means that if you pick it up and suck on it, then well, you're going to get sick. But if it touches, there's a giraffe. If it touches your skin, it's highly unlikely to do too much to you. You might get a bit of itching on you, but I think you'd be okay. There's a giraffe, also not on Juma, studiously avoiding anywhere where we're allowed to drive. Beautiful young male giraffe, I think. Not that young. It is male, isn't it, Brian? Yes, it is. I've confirmed. It is a bull giraffe, enjoying the fresh shoots of the summer, like all of the herbivores are at the moment. Just going to find you a picture of the banded rubber frog. There he is. I'll just show you a quick picture of the banded rubber frog. There he is there, Anna-Marie. Now, many frogs and many toads will secrete a toxic substance, but very few of them are particularly harmful to us. They may cause different kinds of vague effects, but not too much. Certainly, if dogs pick up some, here we go. If dogs pick up some toads, they can end up frothing at the mouth quite badly because of and that just makes them spit them out. It doesn't generally hurt the dogs. And so they all do secrete some kind of substance, but that's the only really toxic one. And interestingly, if you find something like, say, a brown-hooded kingfisher that's caught a frog, it will bash it with its beak against the branches, and that seemingly is to get rid of the toxins before it then swallows the frog. That giraffe is not only enjoying the fresh fruits, but he's also enjoying eating his breakfast for the second time. He's in fact ruminating. You can see he's chewing away, but not actually biting on anything. And that's because he is regurgitating his breakfast back up into his mouth, re-chewing it and swallowing it. And every time I see this, I'm extremely grateful that I was not born a ruminant. Aren't you glad, Brian, that you've only had to have your breakfast once?
Well, depends on the breakfast.
I suppose it does. Right, now Vancy, I believe that you have very patiently been waiting for your question to be answered. Vancy, you want to know if a giraffe if I've ever heard a giraffe belch before. As you correctly surmise, it is a ruminant and therefore will produce a lot of gas which comes out of the front end of the alimentary canal as opposed to the rear end like a zebra. Vancy, I have never heard a giraffe belch, as far as I'm aware, but you're absolutely correct that they would belch. Just perhaps not noisily. They'd probably just do it very subtly. So watch now the neck. You'll see the next bolus coming up. There we go. So, excuse me, Vancy. Vancy, a giraffe absolutely will belch, but probably very quietly, in a polite manner, as befitting one of their regal grace and stature. Yeah. I'm afraid we can't get any closer to it because, as with all the animals in the entire Greater Kruger National Park at the moment, none of them are currently standing where we're allowed to drive. That is just to the south of our boundary. And as you can see, there are no fences, of course. It's just boundaries that we aren't allowed to cross with our human property laws. But the animals are unfettered by the legal ramifications of crossing boundaries, and so they can move up and down as they please. All right, Brian, let's leave that giraffe who's very unkindly not with us. So Vancy, I hope that does answer your question. Going past an area called Twin Dams now. Sometimes there is action, not today. thank you very much everybody who's been watching the Juma Cam. From Chris Rogue and I think Bera. Thank you very much for keeping an eye. Apparently that herd from the Juma Cam is headed off in the southeasterly direction towards the drainage line. We are making our way in that direction. I do just want to quickly get an update from Arathusa to find out if Shadow and Madiba have been seen this morning, and if so, whether we can go and have a look. So we're going to go pretty much to the western end, and then we'll turn north towards where those elephants were seen. Right, excuse me on the radio. I will try and hail them now, see if we can't get any sort of an update. Good morning, Station Arathusa. I'm not sure if anyone copies me. There was a mix-up with our radios this morning and cross communication, and that's why you were hearing one of us. It wasn't the one on drive, it was someone from climate control. May I have an update for the morning, please? It seemed to be a bit close. Oh, did you see that, Brian? Squirrel went into that termite mound. Did it? Squirrels are not normally burrowers, they normally live in trees. And one just went into that termite mound. I can't raise anybody at Arathusa at this stage. We'll try a little bit closer. Behind us, the other clouds are starting to sort of build slowly. So I suspect by the time the weekend rolls around, which is tomorrow I suppose, there will be something in the way of a cold front. Perhaps we will have more delightful rain like we had this time last week, which was wonderful. Beautiful to wake up to soft soaking rain in the bush. Now apparently the Styx Pride yesterday, they crossed out of Arathusa onto Vuyatela or Juma and then crossed south into this property to the south of us. Oh, Brian, where are the animals? Everywhere but here. So it would seem. There is a zebra, Brian, on top of a termite mound. Look at that. That is magnificent to see. Gee whiz. Look at that, everyone. Them sitting on top of the termite mound. Now, this is not uncommon. Well, it's uncommon to see, but I don't think it probably is uncommon behavior. They are doing it, of course, because the nutritional content of the grass on top of a termite mound is much higher than it is anywhere else, and that's because of the dung. As Ruth from Pennsylvania asked about how they make the termite mounds, it of course is made of dung and saliva and sand, so the fertilizer basically natural fertilizer that those termite mounds are made of creates conditions where the grasses are tremendously nutritious. Isn't that fantastic? Here comes another one up the other side. This is really lovely to see. So, as you can see, these are very adept at climbing, these zebras, and it might lead you to believe that they were in fact mountain zebras, which they are not. They are plains zebras, but we do get two other species of zebra in southern Africa. One is the Hartmann's mountain zebra, and the other is the Cape mountain zebra. And the most noticeable difference, of course, to my mind, you read all sorts of different differences, but to my mind, Burchells or plain zebra like these ones look like horses to me. I find that the mountain zebras tend to look much more donkey-like than they do horse-like, and they've got slightly more bowed backs. They're actually a bit bigger, I suppose, which isn't very donkey-like, but they're a bit bigger, got longer ears. They don't have the striping all the way down to the belly, and they tend to have brown muzzles, and they're very white bellies, and if you saw them next to each other you wouldn't confuse them at all. But they do live in the most tremendously dry environments, the mountain zebras. So these mountaineering plains zebras are not in fact mountain zebras at all. They're just very adept at climbing onto termite mounds. I mean, that's that's quite a feat that they've managed to get up there. And interesting also that the grass very clearly tastes better up there than it does down below. And I will try at some stage to taste the difference between non-termite mound grass and termite mound grass and see if I can taste the difference. I think these zebras are just spectacular, I must say. I've always been a huge fan of the zebra. They're just magnificently designed. Might have something to do with my enjoyment of horses. You can see the trees just behind those zebras are really starting to move now as this wind starts to pick up. A couple of impala just behind. And those impala, while they are fairly comfortable around the zebra, they will avoid them. They won't get too close. And that's because the zebras can be a bit nasty when it comes to other species. They can be a bit nasty when it comes to their own kind too. They've been known to kill foals. We witnessed a dreadful incident where a young stallion killed a foal not too long ago. And so you will find that a lot of other species will avoid them quite studiously. That is really a lovely picture. They really are relishing that grass. I don't think I've ever seen this before. It is a massive termite mound. I mean, it's probably, well, it's probably about 2.5 to 3 meters high. Maybe, yeah, about 3 meters high. And it will be a lot bigger, wider than you can see on your screen, as it'll extend quite a long way underground. And yeah, I mean, I think it's probably in diameter, it's probably a good 30 meters in diameter, if you take into account the below ground portions. You can possibly even hear the wind starting to whistle a bit as it blows through the trees and a few of the new leaves that are starting to sprout. 2, 3, 4, 5 zebras. He's right on top there. If I had a good camera, it would be quite a good picture if I could get him to lift his head up. Right, I think that is the best zebra sighting I've had for some time. Lurking on top of the termite mound there, not far from the Arethusa boundary now, so we'll get a quick update from then, and then we'll head north. Wonderful. Things are looking up, Brian. Tracks of a lioness here. You might actually be able to see them. I think you will be able to see them. Let me jump out quickly. Well, you would have been able to see them in the sun. 6 lions that went south down into what was called Hoffman's early this morning. Probably, you know, that means they probably didn't come onto Djuma. They just came straight down this cut line and then headed south. And as the sun comes out, you can see quite nicely the 4 toes and the 3 little back pads, or 3 lobes of the back pad. And I know it's a lioness from the size. It's too big to be a male leopard, and it's much too small to be a big male lion. A big male lion would be that big again. So the size of my hand. I forgot about the zebra, which has now taken fright at my explanation of the word lion. Looked up and panicked and has now descended from its castle. Right, on we go. Really need to have quite good light to show tracks effectively on a camera. So nice to have the light coming from the angle that we did. Right, I shall try once more to get hold of someone on Arethusa. Any station Arethusa, do you copy? Well, they're trying to talk to us. Sorry, I'm vaguely copying, but not copy. I'll try and get a little bit closer. Just checking here to see if there isn't anything going back across into Djuma. But I don't see anything. Oh, look at that. Pretty nightmare in Dallas. While we are just going to try and get back and have a look at these little dwarf mongoose that have flattened themselves against this mound. You see them there, Brian? Is that alright? They're just sitting against this mound, loving the sun, and really kind of, they are not very, I wouldn't describe them as particularly tough, these dwarf mongoose, so they're just trying to get a bit warm, and they won't be enjoying the wind at all. They'll just be trying to get as much sun as they can before going out on a foraging expedition. Pretty nightmare, you want to know about mosquitoes and whether we have problems with them in the area or not. Pretty nightmare, we do have problems with mosquitoes, but not with worms. Apparently you say they give worms to the animals in Dallas, Texas, where you're from. No, they don't do that so much here. It's malaria that we have to watch out for. Again, not really where we are, because there isn't a large sedentary population of human beings. Malaria is not too much of an issue in the reserves, but certainly out in the villages it can be a bit of a problem. And so the first thing you do if you get a temperature is to go and do a quick malaria test. Very easy to cure if you know you have it, but it becomes, the longer you wait, if it goes untreated, it can be potentially fatal. And malaria, of course, requires both the mosquito host and the human host. And so in the absence of a sedentary population of human beings, you find that malaria tends to be a much smaller problem than it might be otherwise. Thank you, Pretty Nightmare. I managed to I did a quick mosquito bomb of my my little home yesterday, and wasn't assailed too much in the night. The major problem, of course, oh sorry, they are still there. Major problem with the mosquito at the moment is the noise they make while you are trying to sleep through the sweaty night. You can see the light changing all the time as the clouds start to scud over us. They're coming in from the southeast. So if you look at them now, you can see them moving from the left-hand side of your picture to the right, and that's indicative of a front coming in from the southeast. Marvelous. Right, I think we should carry on. I'm going to try once more to get hold of Arethusa, and if we fail with that, we'll just head north, I think. But I would quite like to see young Madiba and his mum. Right, here we have arrived at the boundary of Djuma and Arethusa. I will just drive a little bit onto Arethusa and see if we can't get an update. Okay, here we go. Stop the car to maximize possible signal. Good morning, any stations, Arathusa, do you copy me? I'm just come on to on at the signpost, so if you're close by, can I have an update for the morning, please? No good, I'm afraid. Not copying them. Okay, there we go. There's no update. Copy, thank you. We're going to head north towards the Juma waterhole. I think we're still quite away from the possible elephants, but we might find some others on the way there. But no. Also going to definitely try that trick where well, not a trick, I'm going to try and find a termite mound that's got new grass on it, and then we'll sample some of the other stuff away from the termite mound and see if it doesn't taste any different. And see if we were perhaps zebras, if we would also like to climb upon the termite mound for our meal. Certainly if you're ever tracking a rhino, you notice immediately that they move from termite mound to termite mound trying to eat. In the days when we were allowed to do that sort of thing, of course. Shelley in California, a very nice question from you. Of course, when we watch much of our television is American, and when we hear Americans say zebra, we immediately say, no, it's not zebra, it's zebra. And Shelley, you say you were out here last year. That's wonderful. I'm very glad that you came out here. And you were told that the correct pronunciation is not in fact zebra at all, but zebra. And that is true, Shelley. The correct pronunciation is zebra, not zebra. I'm not really sure where zebra came from, or why it was ever said like that. But I think that's the case with lots of different accents around the world which say different things. But I think the correct one is definitely zebra. It's always interested me how the same spelling, the same language has resulted in so many different kinds of pronunciations of various words. The British say yogurt, we say yogurt. Americans say tomatoes, we say tomatoes. And nobody says potato, right? We all say potato. Bit of a squabble going on there between some drongos. We saw a horrible fight the other day between two drongos. One nearly killed the other, pecking and grabbing at his throat and him pinned on the ground, and you could just hear them making a big noise off to the left-hand side. Unfortunately, they're quite far away. But the drongos are those small black spots in the middle of your screen. Let us not tarry long with them, Brian. Marvellous sighting. Well done. Epic. Epic Drongo aerial dogfight there. Well done, Brian. Yes. At least 2 pixels in width. And of course, on the accents, and why it's relevant to this drive is the use of the word aluminum, which is what the Land Rover is made of. It's made of aluminium if you're from Britain. It's made of aluminum if you're from America. And now the British, of course, will tell you that aluminium is, definitely the correct pronunciation, and that the Americans will tell you that aluminum is. Neither of you are in fact correct. According to Mr. Bill Bryson, in his magnificent book, A Short History of Nearly Everything, the correct word is aluminum. Aluminum, as far as I remember. And so none of us are correct, and so we can't point fingers at each other. The Land Rover is made of aluminum. And what that means is that if it bursts into flames, it will burn to the ground. Quite unlike a steel car. Not that it's about to burst into flames. Well, we hope. Think of other words that might be conflicting. Now, a very interesting question as we drive through here in the hopes of seeing some elephants. And Laurie, in Wisconsin, you've definitely noticed that the elephants here push over trees. And you want to know, do they ever push over the power poles? Laurie, they don't tend to, you know. And that's mainly because there's nothing for them on the poles. There's a Battalier. Is that what we're looking at, Brian? Coming down. Look at the way this beautiful bird flies. Magnificent Battalier coming over us. Oh, that's wonderful. Look at the way he's balancing as he flies into this gusting wind. So, Laurie, they don't push over power poles, and that's mainly because there's nothing to eat at the top of them. There's no bark on them for them to eat. So generally they don't. Oh, that's wonderful. There's a male Battalier. There's no other bird that's able to fly with so short a tail with a wind blowing like this. Oh, that's wonderful. Look at that. It is truly a wonder of the avian world, the design of the Battalier. Wow, that's beautiful. I know I've told the story before, but the Battalier has no tail. It takes 7 years to get to that adult plumage, and it's born with a long tail. And the reason for that is that it's so difficult to fly with no tail. And you saw it rocking from side to side, completely unlike a vulture or an eagle, for example. But no self-respecting vulture or eagle is going to try and fly at that height in a wind like this. They'll end up on the floor pretty quickly. And the Battalier is so sophisticated, its flight design is so sophisticated that, I mean, it takes 7 years to learn to fly without a tail, because the tail gives you stability, and without a tail you become inherently unstable, and that's why it rocks like that. And apparently, quite interestingly, the American B-2 bomber, which is the stealth bomber, you notice that doesn't have a tail. It's basically just a flying wing, much like the Battalier. And you can't apparently fly those planes manually. You have to have computer control to help, because their design is inherently so unstable. Isn't that amazing? Right, onward. Another beautiful torchwood tree up ahead in front of us, and we saw that one at Buffelshoek Dam has started to flush its new leaves. And a torchwood is what we call semi-deciduous, and that means that it doesn't lose its leaves during the winter time. It remains green, but it will now start to replace its leaves. And the leaves will start to fall out. You can see them fluttering there in the breeze, and those leaves will fall out of the tree and be replaced almost immediately by the new ones that you can see coming through right now. Lovely. Balanites mogami, the torchwood, or green thorn. And it's called a green thorn, of course, Brian, because it has... Exactly. Every time I drive down one of these roads, and I mean we do it often obviously, it is amazing to watch how there's a change in the colour. And Scott was saying, Scott is something of a, he'll call himself an amateur, but I think he's quite a professional gardener. And he plants the odd seed and sees what happens. And he said yesterday he was sitting outside having planted a seed of something or other, and planted it a few days ago, and it's come up. He doesn't know what it is yet, so that's quite interesting. And it was about, he said, within the sort of brief 20 minutes he was outside watching it, he noticed it going from sort of pointing upwards to opening out. So you can imagine that process happening all around us now, and that's why it's literally from day to day it's becoming substantially and appreciably greener. Tracks of elephants on the road here. Very nice to see some elephants at this stage. And I think the elephants, unfortunately, as the wind starts to pick up, they'll go into slightly thicker bush and try and avoid having the wind blowing upon them if they can. And for them also, they'll be so happy with the rain, because it does mean that they can now start to graze. An elephant will always graze if it has the chance to, rather than eat bark and leaves and pods and hard things that grind their teeth down. Grass is an excellent concentration of carbohydrates. And sometimes, I mean, they do need the pods for the protein, but the grass is the easiest thing for an elephant to eat. We're also now driving through a grove of what's called terminalia bushes, or silver cluster leaf. And the silver cluster leaf produces a flower that will make this area where we are now almost a no-go zone because of the stink. They smell like really rancid, dirty feet. So think of the foulest smelling foot you've ever had the displeasure of coming across in your life, and that is what this grove is going to smell like when the terminalia flowers come out. They must be pollinated by some sort of carrion-eating insect. We have a magnificent surprise, and I'm about to go completely off air. Something else will come upon air, and I will see you later. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to the Wendy, who's made a miraculous return. Eugene has been up since the crack of dawn putting all the technical things up. Scott and I managed to erect the aerial. That's about all we did. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Brent Smith, and I'm going to be your guide for the next sort of 20 minutes. And I have, for a change, I have Scotty D on camera with me. So very different team to what we normally have. It has made an appearance once or twice in the past, but really great news. We have Wendy up and running, and thanks for the update from the Juma account that there were elephants seen. So we're going to go try see if we can find those elephants. And really good to have 2 vehicles back. And I'm sure you're very tired of James droning on and on and on. He does like the sound of his own voice. So we're going to go see if we can find some animals instead. So a very gusty, windy morning, and I'm hoping it's not going to bring us another cold front, but that is a possibility. So apparently the elephants went southeast, so what I think we're going to do is we're going to go down Twin Dams, and then we're going to cross the Moati a little bit further down and see if the elephants have popped out on the other side of the drainage line, or if they've popped out onto Twin Dams Road. So it's amazing how much the bush is changing around us. There's this sort of hue of green everywhere. The air is nice and crisp and fresh and clean. Yesterday I noticed that there was a lot of smoke in the air, and I think after this little bit of rain, I think the Kruger National Park and the Manuleti have taken that opportunity to burn some of their grassland areas in preparation for the oncoming summer. And so fire is actually good for a lot of Africa. The majority of Africa outside of the rainforest basin and the Congo basin are grasslands and savannas, and these are fire climax biome. So what that means is a lot of the plant species and grass species need fire to regenerate. It also destroys all the moribund dead sticks and grass that are everywhere that are actually unpalatable to most things. So I'm hoping the elephants have just been slowly moving through the drainage line to the north of me, and are hopefully going to pop out on around Vulture's Nest in that area there. Just going to be on the game drive radio for a second, see if there have been any updates on Vuyatela. Morning mobile stations, any updates for Vuyatela, please? Copy, thanks. Any update on the Incohomos? Copy, thanks, James. Oops. Copy, thank you very much. So guys, it's just quite a strange little mark on the road here next to me that made my foot slip off the clutch there. Initially I thought it might be elephant dragging their foot, but now it actually looks far more like a drag mark to me. Very difficult to see with a strong wind, and it has been driven over. It still possibly could be an elephant dragging his foot, but the wind has moved the sand. I'm just going to move further down the road where it's possibly a bit softer and we might be able to see a bit better. What do you think, Scottish?
Sounds good.
So I think there's a culprit. It was the Ellies. just on that harder piece of soil, it did look slightly like a drag mark, but I think it was just an elephant maybe dragging a branch rather than dragging its foot. Even though it's very sunny, this wind is actually quite chilly. And I really hope there's not another beastly cold front heading in from Mozambique off the ocean. So lots of welcome backs for the Wendy. We're very excited to have her back as well, and definitely going to improve our chances on finding you guys the best sightings out there, having two vehicles operating. And hopefully soon we'll have two vehicles and a walk operating. I can hear Scott giggling in the background there. I'm having a bit of problems with my radio comms, so I think Scott's actually hearing, but I'm only catching every second word.
Basically, X-Ranga has picked up on your foot slipping on the clutch and mentioned that you should be more careful and not break the vehicle that's just been fixed.
Well, X-Ranga, I actually have no comment back for that. See, I get slightly distracted around the things around me, like a possible of a leopard drag mark. And yes, I should possibly be a little bit more careful with the clutch, although I think the clutch is the least of our worries on these vehicles. Okay, I think there's Ellie should be around here somewhere. Hopefully across on the other side of the Mulwati drainage line. No trucks coming out here. Seems to be getting colder and colder. I'm having quite a lot of problems with my comms. I think I'm actually going to swap with Scott quickly because I can't hear anything through this earpiece. I think there's a loose connection in it. Thank you very much, Scottish.
No problem.
Okay. Hopefully I'll be able to communicate now. got a very interesting question from Sibusiso in Hammanskraal. For those of you wondering where Hammanskraal is, it's just outside Pretoria, one of the capital cities of South Africa. Sibusiso has noted that an elephant and a hippo have a very similar stomach size, and he was wondering why does an elephant then eat probably 2/3 more a day or in a feeding session than a hippo does. Well, Sibusiso, it's very, very simple. The ellies are much more active. They are moving for the majority of the 24 hours, and therefore they need a lot more food to sustain them over that period. Where we must remember, a hippo is probably stationary for a good 13 or 14 hours a day in the water. The other reason is that hippo's digestive system, even though it's not a ruminant, so it is not the most effective, it is still more effective than an elephant's digestive system. So the hippos actually have 3 stomachs, or 3 stomach compartments. They're not like a hindgut fermenter like a zebra. And what happens is they have a lot of microbacteria that actually get involved in the digestive process in the first set of stomachs. So the food starts to being digested far earlier than it does in the case of an elephant. So, and then on top of that, not being mobile for the majority of the day makes them their stomach far more efficient at digesting. And also that really big point is that they don't move for 14 hours a day, whereas an elephant probably doesn't move for 2 or 3 hours a day. Speaking of elephants, I'm hoping they've popped out somewhere in this block. So just to give you the facts that Sibusiso went through, a big elephant bull is capable of eating up to 300 kilograms of vegetable matter in a day. A cow probably 150 to 200, whereas a big hippo bull only eats 60 kilograms of vegetable matter in a day. I mean, but just think about it, 60 kilograms is still an incredibly large amount of food. I'm going to try and do the conversion for you into, so about 45 kgs is about 100 pounds more or less, so probably 150 pounds or so, 60 kilograms, that's about what a hippo eats in a night. And then obviously the elephant, let's call it 250, so 90 to well over 500 pounds of vegetable matter in a day. Come on, elephants, where are you hiding? I did hear a report on the Game Drive channel that there were possibly some elephants near the Buffelshoek boundary, so we're going to head up towards there and then possibly cut across, see if we can catch up. I think it's a different herd from the one that came to the Juma waterhole. So I hear Scott found something very interesting at this little nest site. We've seen now the 3rd different species utilizing it, and it doesn't look like they're at home at the moment, but in this dead knobthorn we've seen, I know Scott last year during the summer months saw a woodlands kingfisher nesting in here, and then we have seen a rock monitor utilizing it, and now Scott tells me he saw a lilac-breasted roller utilizing it. So they timeshare in these nesting holes, and different animals and different birds will use it at different times of the year. As it's got a bit warmer, you'll probably find that rock monitor has moved along and is far more mobile than he was during those cold winter months where we found him basking out of that hole almost every morning. But nice one to come check on. Be wonderful to see if that roller has any success in raising chicks in that particular nest, or will the rock monitor come back for a snack of lilac-breasted roller eggs or chicks. Also, the one other issue with that hole, from what we can see, is also it's probably quite an easy target for a predatory bird like an African harrier hawk to get its feet in there to feed off the chicks of the lilac-breasted roller. It is possible that these elephants have stayed in this very thick block here, and that will make it a little bit more difficult for us to find them. So we've chatted a little bit about elephants and hippos so far this morning. Now, Sandy from British Columbia has got a very interesting question. If any animal out here in the bush basically is barren, so an elephant, a lion, a leopard, and she's unable to have babies, will she still continue to come into estrus and attempt to mate? And then said same for the male if he is sterile. Most definitely, Sandy, they will try and mate, and they probably don't have that conscious knowledge that they are unable to produce babies, so they will definitely continue to try and mate even if they are barren. And with elephants in particular, if we go to the male side of them possibly being sterile, I was lucky enough to be involved a few years ago as an observer on a laparoscopic vasectomy of an African elephant bull. So there's a little reserve on the border of Swaziland called Sigomvela, and they had a problem. The elephant population was expanding too much for this very small reserve. So in the past, many different things have been tried to curb elephant populations, from hormonal treatments of the females. What happened is that it really confused the sort of social structure of the elephants using hormones. So as a bit of a new study, and it was actually sponsored by Disney, all the procedures and the drugs were sponsored by Disney. And so what they did is they decided on a percentage of the elephant bulls. So they obviously didn't want to stop them breeding completely, guys. It's just a little, in this strong gusty wind, there's a little female duiker. Hopefully she doesn't bolt. There's a little male. I think I see some horns there. Yep. So bedded down in this cold, gusty weather. Nice little spot, but protected behind a big bush there. And you can actually see those preorbital glands very clearly below the eyes there. Trying to decide whether we've actually spotted him or we just happened to be in the area. So especially with this gusty wind, I'm not going to stay too long. We might disturb him, he might run, and this is not the type of weather he wants to be mobile in, because with a strong wind, his sense of smell is affected, also probably more importantly his sense of hearing. So it would be good hunting weather for any of the cats in this weather. But back to those elephant at Sigomvela. So they decided on a sort of a scale how many male elephants they were going to snip, so to speak, and those elephants then continued to behave, even though they were sterile now, exactly like wild elephants or non-snipped elephants would. They came into must because the body was still producing the hormones, and obviously there just wasn't a deposit made, and so they continued to act, and it worked very well in that situation. Because it was a very small reserve and the elephants continued with their natural behavior, their hormones weren't affected, which is probably the biggest problem with the hormonal treatments. It really changes estrous cycles, must cycles in them, and it can affect the whole social dynamic in elephants. So it is a very useful tool in small reserves, that vasectomy, and it is quite an incredible procedure to watch. And basically what happens is someone goes, a vet goes in the helicopter with his dart gun, and then the ground team's on the bottom, and now an elephant's testes are right up at the top of its back, just in front of that back hip bone. So quite a difficult place to operate on. So what they did is they dart just a hornbill. They would dart the elephant, and off it would run, and they would actually, while it was slowly coming under the influence of the drugs, M99 is the drug used in this case, and they would shepherd it towards where the ground team would be waiting near a road, and the ground team, part of the ground team was a big flatbed lorry with a crane. So then what would happen is the elephant would go down, and the vets would obviously be there to administer stuff, and they're obviously very specialized vets that were brought out from the United States for this procedure. Not much laparoscopic vasectomies happen on wild animals out here in the bush, but in zoo animals and stuff like that it does happen. So there were some very specialized vets who came out from the States, 4 of them, and once this elephant was now darted, they would then put a harness around it and lift it up and hang it off the edge of this low bed lorry from a crane, and then the vet put up their table and stuff on the flatbed of the lorry and make the incision and stuff with the elephant hanging next to them. So the base of the lorry became their work surface, and the elephant hung off the ground next to them so they could perform the operation. And it's an amazing thing. They put a tube probably about this big into the incision, and then a video camera, and then a really incredibly long sort of set of scissors and stitching stuff. And I mean, the whole process was over in about half an hour. Stitch him up, let him go, wake him up, and off he went. But it was incredible to watch. You think the elephant's over here and they're operating, but they are operating looking at a little computer or like a screen and using little joysticks and stuff to perform the operation. It was a really incredible thing to watch. But as far as I'm aware, it was a very successful thing, and it has not stopped the breeding in total. They obviously left some bulls unsnipped, and so the elephant population can continue to behave and function normally with the natural hormones coming into place, but it has slowed down their breeding. And there's actually quite a problem in South Africa that you can't really give elephants away anymore. Most reserves are quite saturated with them, and particularly the smaller reserves. So there is different ways and means that people are thinking about to try sort of slow the elephant birth rates. So I heard the elephants were on the Buffelshoek boundary to the northwest of us, so we're going to go have a look over there. So apparently there's the combination of Scott and myself on the same vehicle is making quite a few people's day, and Arcadia would really like a picture of Scotty on camera, so I promised to take one, and I will post it after the end of the morning safari. You have made Scott smile from ear to ear at the moment. He's looking very chuffed with himself. Wow, look at that. Now, if we look at the road ahead of us here, you can see how this mud wallow is probably going to take over the road at some stage, and we're going to have to move the road. It looks like the Ellies have had a lot of fun in here. You can see they've sprayed the mud out of the hole all over the road, and they've actually even extended the hole into the road now. Muddy. Right, we're going to have to think about maneuvering the road, because I don't think that mud wallow is going to stop growing. So I'm sure there might have been a few bugs that might have taken advantage of that mud wallow. It is now dry from the elephants and probably some buffalo splashing around and wallowing in it. So the mud wallows or pans, as they become eventually, that we find a lot of life in, are the more mature ones, the older ones, because there is a chance for vegetation to start growing on the edges. These ones that are still in the process of being made, you might find terrapins once we've had a lot of rain and it's very full in them, and they're just waiting to attack the buffalo. And speaking of a buffalo that was attacked, this is the remains of that buffalo that was killed by the Birmingham boys. And they abandoned it quite shortly after they left probably 3/4 of the buffalo there and charged off to chase the matimbas. There we go. I'm hoping in this area we move as well. Karuna's been sighted briefly a couple of times, so who knows, maybe the Queen will decide to put an appearance for the return of the Wendy. So while we continue to see what else we can find along here, we're going to cross back across to Commander Bond, who is, as always, doing exactly what you ask of him.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jigger. Very nice to have Wendy back online. It does mean that you don't have to stare blankly at me for the entire duration of the 3-hour drive, which I think is a good thing. Variety, as they say, is the spice of life. To the extent that my hat is now in a different direction, and that is because it's not so much for variety, but because the wind became so strong that it threatened to blow off my head. So please excuse my my slightly gangster style, if you like, for the remainder of this drive. We have come to look for some buffalo bulls that were apparently around here. They have disappeared into the ether, much like everything else, much like the poor old elephants that Brent was trying to find. And we did go and have a look at the hyena den, where the hyenas were unsurprisingly not there. Perhaps there was a little one in the hole, but I didn't stick my head in to have a look. So they're around somewhere, I suspect resting up after an evening of foraging around the place. So we're now heading towards Twin Dams, where we'll see what we can see, I suppose. Like I said, it's very pretty out here. Lovely smells, sounds, and always nice to have the eeriness of a front moving in. There is an impala. Beautiful little male impala here. He's quite a magnificent animal, but he doesn't want to be alone for too long in the wind out here before a predator, that's assuming there are any on Djuma, will sneak up on him as the wind blows and rustles and takes away their scent and impairs his hearing by rustling. So you'll want to find some friends, but you can see in this light the magnificent musculature of their hindquarters and their shoulders. They really are spectacularly beautiful animals. Right, well, he's gone, much like many of his friends. And Sue's in San Francisco, while we're talking about hyena, you want to know how hyenas and wild dogs relate to each other. Sue's, they relate to each other very, very badly indeed. They are not friends by any stretch of the imagination, and they will fight readily over kills. Hyenas will definitely try and steal from wild dogs, and often will come into wild dog kills because wild dogs make an enormous noise when they kill, communicating and chirping at each other, and so often there's conflict between them, and there's definitely no love lost at all. They don't like each other in the slightest. There's a very odd looking tree here, Brian. What is this thing? Oh, it's so odd that it's entirely common. It is a Natal Gwari. Sorry, it looked very different. Everybody, that'll be about as fascinating as drying paint to you. I thought it was a different species, but it is a Natal Gwari. Well, that's a very pretty Natal Wari, glistening there in the morning sun in its new fresh spring bloom. Well done, Brian.
Very nice.
That might win us an award.
Best sighting of the year.
Best sighting of the year. Next to the rock that Ruth in Pennsylvania asked us for, that Wari must rank right up there. Right, on to Twin Dams we hie. Into the howling gale. Brian, what is that noise? Oh, it is a stick, everyone. Don't worry. I thought maybe we'd got something stuck. This is actually quite pretty and quite interesting. So there's a jackalberry tree above us here, and while we look at it, just look at the leaves floating down from it, if you can see a few of them. Sue's in San Francisco, just to wrap up the hyena and wild dog situation, they don't like each other at all. They are not friends. They will never be friends, and they are extreme competitors. And they sit at 2 and 3 on the predator hierarchy that is topped by the magnificent African lion, conspicuous of course by his absence at Juma at the moment. Now that tree is a jackalberry, and it is also much like the Balanites megami. It is semi-deciduous, and it's now starting to lose its leaves. It'll replace them very quickly, but it really is a wonderful color. And it gives a slightly autumnal feel to the spring. Sorry, Suze, I also believe you want to know, do they prey on one another? No, they definitely won't prey on one another. I mean, a hyena might eat a wild dog if it found one dead, but I don't think they prey on one another at all, no. Lovely smell. So this tree will lose its leaves very fast and then gain some new ones. In fact, I suspect before they're all gone, the new leaves will start to sprout. Marvellous. Right. Twin Dams is a hive of activity. Not all the jackalberries are doing this now, most of them sort of around this time, but they all are now starting to lose their leaves. Oh. Thank you, Marianne. You apparently like my gangster look, so I shall maintain it for the remainder of the drive. That's more, yeah, it's more rock than gangster. Yeah. We'll just quickly drive up onto the dam wall here, and you can have a look and see how much water there is, but also how fast it's starting to dry out again. Beautiful pea green algae here. While we sit and have a look at Twin Dams, again I have no idea where its twin actually is. Kachino John, you want to know if with the seasons change we've started to see any rock pythons yet? Kachino John, I'm sure they're around, I just haven't seen any just yet, but they're one of my favorite snakes, I must say, so I'm hoping to see one fairly soon. We have had 3 snakes in camp recently. We had 2 variegated bush snakes and 1 red-lipped herald yesterday. Isn't that delicious looking pea soup inviting any animal that wishes to come to Twin Dams to sup upon its algal bloom? Now, Brian, there's a brown snake eagle up there. And what's interesting is that it's almost hovering. I know it's not, it's quite far away, but it's almost hovering in this wind. And its cousin, the black-breasted snake eagle, is one of the only birds that is truly able to hover. Beautiful bird. And what differentiates it from a standard issue eagle like the Wahlberg's is, of course, that it has bare legs. It does not have the feathering down to the talons that a Wahlberg's or true eagle would have. And that, of course, apparently is to stop, apparently it helps it to catch snakes. I'm not really sure how, but apparently it's quite helpful. I don't particularly buy that explanation. You can hear the wind starting to blow quite strongly now. So it'll be very interesting to see this afternoon what it all feels like. There he's hovering, dead still. Beautiful. And Brian, there's a Wahlberg's above him. I don't know if you can see that. Way up. It's a tiny speck in the sky. You see him there? No, he's too far away. There was a Wahlberg's eagle way up, another sort of that height again above. And there are quite a few. If you look carefully, you can see one or two big birds around the place just trying to gain height as this wind and a little bit of heat starts to build. And Ramey, you wanted to know, is that green algae toxic at all? Ramey, it isn't, as far as I know. I mean, I wouldn't stick my face in it and have a drink, but I think that animals can drink it pretty well. And yeah, so I don't think it's toxic, and it will certainly feed all sorts of other creatures. The catfish will enjoy it, and the tilapia will enjoy it, and probably various other things. Right, on that note, let us cross back across to Brent and see what he's got to show you, and I'll see you just now.
Welcome back to the Meandering Wendy, everyone. Scott and I have not managed to find elephants, but we are still out and about. Hopefully we're going to find something soon. Otherwise, you're just going to have to listen to me drone on and on and on. We're going to have a quick look at Impala Plains. Nice open area. Maybe there might be some impala feeding on that nice lush green grass. And Scott's actually spotted a plant that's growing all over the place. And it's too young to identify, so we'll show it to you, and I'm sure between us we're going to just keep an eye on this plant and try to figure out what it is as it gets bigger. So we were hoping for any sign of Madame Karula, but unfortunately no tracks and no sign of them just yet. We're going to silently coast onto Impala Plains. And the slim possibility we might be able to sneak up on some unsuspecting beast. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that we will be the only unsuspecting beasts on Impala Plains on this windy morning. as I suspected, the only unsuspecting beasts are us. Not even Impala. Can you see your mystery plant, Scotty?
Not immediately, no.
Go forward a little bit. I am really excited for the first wildflowers to pop out. I think it is going to be a race. I think the Wildtharias will win. They've managed, some of them were even flowering a couple of weeks ago before the rain. Let's see if we can find Scotty's his unidentified plant and we can have a look at it. There we go. Here's one here. So they're growing all over quarantine. Scott said he's seen them on Mvubu Road, Sandy Patch, Impala Plains, and none of us are sure what it is yet. We're going to have to wait for it to get a little bit older so we can identify it. A really fun little cameo, and great to have the Wendy back, and also great to be on the vehicle with Scotty D. So it's been fun. For the last few minutes of the show, we're going to, and you will see 2 vehicles out on the Sunset Safari today.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jigger. Wendy, as I said at the beginning of this drive, is a recalcitrant old cow. She's just gone unlive again. I'm sure that she will be back for the afternoon though, with any luck. She's not my favourite. Although Jigger is older and seemingly more decrepit, she is far more reliable. We do not have a great deal of time left to find the plethora of predators that Djuma boasts. Rest assured, we shall return this afternoon in order to find them. Hopefully Brent and I will be back this afternoon. I know Jiga does have to have a few things done to her, but I think she'll be okay by then. So, it has been a drive of, well, shall we say, peace and smaller things that the bush has to offer. And I thank you once again for all of your comments and questions, which do stimulate many topics of discussion. Thank you very much. A big thank you to Brian on camera for persisting with me the whole way, and say hello to the thumb. Hello thumb. Yes, xylitol free thumb that. A big thank you to Tara and Louise in the final control, of course. And we're most pleased to have Wendy with Brent and Scott on camera today back. Hopefully all will be okay this afternoon. And a big shout out to Eugene, who obviously spent much of the morning fixing bits and pieces up. So, thank you very much. That's all I have to say to you this morning. We will see you this afternoon at some stage. I hope that you stay safe and happy and healthy wherever you happen to find yourself on the blue planet. Bye bye and see you later.